They say, don't take it personally. But what if that's the problem? Hurting? Not my problem. Injustice? Someone else will handle it. Faith. When faith stops being personal, it stops being powerful.
My grandkids, Maximus and Georgia May, are playing soccer now. They are 4 and 6 years old. I don't know if you've ever been to a 4-year-old's soccer game or not, but it is quite the event. And it's fun, and we're sitting there, and the weather's so nice, and all the kids are, they look so cute, and they're running around, and it's essentially like just organized chaos is all. It's just this amoeba that goes around the field. And trying to teach them how to anticipate where the ball's going versus where it is, and just trying to get them to keep their eyes on the ball. Don't look over here. Look, the action's over here. See, the ball's over there now spread out so the person can pass it to you. I mean, it's just crazy how many parents are sitting on the sidelines just yelling and screaming and then saying, good job, good job. But it's so funny. One time, just several games ago, Maximus was on the field, and he was kind of getting oriented to it. And he's a really good athlete. But socially, he's just so aware of what's going on around him. So he's really playing good now, and he scored 5 goals yesterday. But earlier on, he was like just trying to figure out what is happening, and he's like running around. But then kids, other kids are not as ready or as willing. There's nothing worse than the parent have to coming out on the field because the kids cry. One of their kids are just crying, and they're like, I don't want to do it. And it's like this whole thing plays out in front of everybody, and it's really tough. And so this kid gets hurt on the field. Something happens, kicked, and the kid starts screaming, like just screaming. And Maximus is out there, and he was like looking at the kid. And then, they're trying to start the game. They haven't stopped the game, and he's watching this kid. So the ball's still going. And the grandparents and the parents are, go get the ball, go get the ball. And Maximus is just walking over to the little kid and like touching him on his shoulder and helping him get up. And he was just like really concerned about him. And we're all like, stop doing that for the other kid from the other team. Get the ball. It's like, why are you taking care of the other team? They have a coach. They have their own parents. It is crazy what happens to parents in those kind of games. But there's something really sacred about that kind of innocence, isn't there? Like the innocence of Maximus, the innocence of the child, and looking at somebody who needs help. And it's just like it was like a thing that he automatically just did out of his own heart. Somewhere along the way, as adults, sometimes we lose this. We learn to be cautious, efficient. We learn to be self-protective. We start measuring who deserves our help and what it might cost us. But maybe rehumanizing the world isn't about learning something new. It's about remembering something old. And it's about returning to the innocence of kindness. It's about returning to what God intended for humans to be for one another. It's not unlike what one expert in the law asked Jesus in Luke chapter 10. In Luke chapter 10, this is what it is. In verse 25, it says, on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? So he's interested. Jesus, tell me what the answer is. He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. Do this, I love this line, do this and you will live, truly live. But he wanted to justify himself. So he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. So Jesus doesn't answer the question, he just answers with a story, right? So he says, they stripped him of his clothes, beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road when he saw the man, and he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, and then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. Now we're in this series called Take It Personally. And we're kind of flipping the idea on its head that we live in a culture where we take things too personally and we get offended too easily and we fight with each other and we get angry about things. And this take it personally idea is kind of seen in our culture as negative. But what we're doing is we're talking about taking the gospel personally. We're talking about taking what Jesus said personally and holding everything else loosely. That's what we're doing. And so we're going to talk about what it means to take the gospel seriously and to take it personally. And here's what I want to start with. I want to start with, to become a good Samaritan, you have to start by admitting that you have a bad Samaritan inside. You and I have a bad Samaritan inside of you. Who is this person? Who is this bad Samaritan? Well, they walk into the sanctuary and they scan the room, right? They try to, who has good kids for my kids to play with? Who looks like my type of person? Who seems interesting, successful, like who is attractive and has it all put together? We do this everywhere, by the way. We do it at work, we do it at school, we do it in social circles, even on our social media feeds we do it. Like we praise the powerful and scroll right past the weak. The bad Samaritan whispers, who can help me? The good Samaritan asks, who can I help? If we want to become good Samaritans, we have to first acknowledge that we've all got a bad Samaritan inside of us. One who's really good at pretending to be polite and spiritual while staying completely self-focused. Now, when I say good Samaritan, most people immediately think of someone helping the homeless, right? That's kind of our go-to idea. And yes, that's part of it. That's one of the examples in our culture where being helpful. We've got guys right down here on the street when you exit church on Sunday. And my wife has made a practice of carrying around dollar bills in our little thing in the car, and she just decided she was going to, when she drives by these people, she's going to give them something. So she'll give them a bottle of water, or she'll give them $1, or she'll yell at me when we don't have any of that in the car. But listen, it's not just the person holding a sign on the corner. It's actually the person sitting alone at church or at the lunch table. It's the person who didn't get invited to lunch or to Thanksgiving dinner, maybe. It's the neighbor whose name you still don't remember. It's the coworker who's always left out of the group chat. It's the person whose story you've never stopped long enough to hear. Because compassion isn't just about grand gestures, right? It's about seeing the unseen. Seeing what others don't want to see or have turned away from. So what does it take to be a good Samaritan? I'm glad you asked. It's about 4 things. Here it is. Pretty simple. We could go home right after this, but because I'm a pastor and a preacher, we won't. Number 1, you have to be busy. Great, you all qualify. Most of you are busy. You have to be going somewhere important. Some of you qualify. You have to be willing to stop. You have to be willing to stop. And then you have to be willing to sacrifice something to help someone else. This is the story of Jesus. This is what he says to the people who ask, how do I inherit eternal life? Just think about this. What might be possible, One Chapel, if we all did this? What might be possible if we really acted this way in our city, in our neighborhoods, in our culture? If we just did this as a way of functioning? Because the story isn't about identifying who your neighbor is. It's about being and becoming the kind of person who acts like a good neighbor. I want you to consider these 3 big ideas here today, okay? Are you ready? You can write these down, or you can join us in the message notes with the QR code on the seat back in front of you. Number 1, proximity without compassion produces passivity. That's a pretty important idea, isn't it? Some big words there. It means nearness without empathy creates a way of being passive. And it happens all the time in our culture. In big cities where people live close together all the time. Apartment buildings are full of people who never talk to each other as they go in through the hallway and walk into their apartment. There are massive neighborhoods all around Austin where people drive, use the clicker to get in their garage and go in and then click it back down, and that's about it. Occasionally we wave. So, this passage says in verse 31 to 32, a priest and a Levite passed by on the other side. This is before the Samaritan shows up. The Jericho road was infamous. A 17-mile descent from Jerusalem, dropping 3,300 feet in elevation. It was nicknamed the Way of Blood because of all the constant robberies and murders. To walk past a wounded man wasn't pure cruelty. It was logical for travelers trying to get to where they were going, to protect themselves. Now, the priest and the Levite, they were religious elites. The priest is a descendant of Aaron, specifically. Levites were descendants of the tribe of Levi. All right, and they all took part in taking care of the temple. So these are religious elites who they believed and embraced purity laws from the Old Testament, like in Leviticus 21, and that purity law forbade connecting or touching corpses. Anybody who's dead, touching blood could require days of ritual cleansing. Now, it's kind of a misnomer. What God did in those purity laws, he was teaching them how to be a community. And so it wasn't that they couldn't touch a body, it was that if they did touch a body, then they needed to do something to purify themselves. And he's teaching them about holiness and about what he wants, how he wants them to live. And so they embraced these ideas. And so it would have taken, ritual cleansing would have jeopardized their temple duties. Are you with me? But here's the irony. The devotion to religious law blinded them to the heart of God's law, which is love. And this was the problem in Jesus' days. All the religious elites were consumed with the law and forgot how much God loved people. Sadly, there's a haunting thin line between self-preservation and dehumanization. In John Krakar's best-selling book, Into Thin Air, some of you might have read it or heard about it. It's climbers. They're climbing Mount Everest, and many climbers describe walking past dying people on Mount Everest, stepping over bodies just to reach the summit. And some did it because they were too weak to help. Some, they do it because turning their back meant losing a shot at the top. Like, so they didn't want to turn back. They didn't want to stop. They wanted to get to the top. It's a brutal picture of what happens when ambition outweighs compassion. Like trying to get somewhere instead of realizing that you're the carrier of compassion. When human beings become obstacles instead of image bearers of God. Before we shake our heads, we should ask, how often do we do the same? Online, when we reduce people to avatars, insults, and arguments, right? I mean, online is this wonderful and terrible place where all kinds of things happen, and people call each other names, and they're hard on people. It's that proximity without compassion. At work, when we treat colleagues like competitors and we need to outpace them. It's in our neighborhoods when we scroll past suffering because we're chasing our own summits. Whether it's in the boardroom or our media feed or the freeway, dehumanization allows us to walk by another person. We start to not think of them as God thinks of them. Modern psychology calls this moral licensing. We sort of have a moral license when we convince ourselves we're good people because of what we believe or intend, so we excuse not acting when it costs us. We have the moral license to do this. That's what was happening with the priest and the Levite. They felt the moral license to just go ahead and do something else, walk on the other side of the road and not take care of this man. Spiritually, dehumanizing is the soil where moral licensing grows, because once someone isn't fully human in our minds, once someone doesn't measure up to who God sees them as, we no longer feel the moral weight to love them. This is what's happening in our political culture. We dehumanize. We no longer feel the need to love him. So what makes the Samaritan good? What makes him so good? Well, the first answer is he looked beyond the problems and saw the person. He looked beyond the issues that were going on around him and he saw the person. He decided to prioritize the person above wherever he was going. Here's a question for all of us. Do I justify inaction because of busyness or fear or self-care? Self-care has become a big word these days. I think it's important to understand that sometimes as Christians we confuse believing in Jesus with acting like Jesus. You have to believe in him, but it also means if you believe him and you trust him to act like him. And if you split those two things up, it really causes problems. Are we structured for comfort as a church? Like One Chapel, are we structured for comfort or are we structured for compassion? It's really an important question. Would our city even notice if we didn't exist anymore? That's a good question. Number two. Everybody say number two. Number two, the Samaritan took it personally. He took it personally. Verse 33 says, but a Samaritan saw him and had compassion. Now listen, for 500 years, Jews and Samaritans had been enemies. Samaritans were the half-breeds of Jews, and they were rejected and resisted. Mutual hostility ran deep between them, racially, politically, religiously. They did not like each other. That sounds very familiar, doesn't it? We live in a similar time. So when Jesus makes the Samaritan the hero of the story, it's shocking. He's like going on and telling the story, and they're thinking, oh, I see a priest, a Levite. Let's see, who's going to be the third person? I know, it'll be a Pharisee. They're the best of of religious leaders. But then he says, a Samaritan. A Samaritan becomes the hero of the story. It's like telling your story where your enemy loves better than your own tribe. And the Samaritan, I want you to realize this, the Samaritan was actually on his way somewhere. He had stuff to do. He had places to go. He had places to be, just like the priest and the Levite, but they were the ones that all of Jesus's listeners would have thought, yeah, they should have helped. The priest and the Levite, they should have helped. I don't know what it is. I don't know. People who don't know Jesus and don't even know the Bible, they can always spot hypocrisy. What is that? Like, listen, they're watching you. If they know you're a Christian, they know how you should act. I don't know how it works this way. I think it's something that God hardwired into people. There's a morality that everybody forgets is actually in existence in creation. And all that God's doing is trying to help people discover that he's the author of how to live. That's what's really happening. But they all can see it. They don't know the Bible, they don't know Jesus, but they can look at you and go, hey. Don't be like that. It's really worse when Christians start to act like that. It's interesting. Have you ever seen someone having a bad day? Have you ever seen somebody having a bad day? Yeah. And, think about your responses. Have you ever seen someone you didn't want to help? I have. As a pastor, it might come around more regularly than you. Don't think about that too much. The Samaritan was on the same dangerous road. Stopping meant exposure to the same threat that everybody else had. Helping wasn't safe, but love rarely is. There were good reasons not to stop. But what made the Samaritan good? What made the Samaritan so good? Here it is. He risked his life, his resources, and his reputation for someone who wouldn't have done the same for him. You guys got to remember, Jesus is telling this story. He's telling this story so that the religious people can understand how they should act. So here's a question. Do I only help when it's convenient? It's one of the reasons we think that everybody needs to be on a team around here, because it starts you down the road of having to serve other people. I just think it's important. It cultivates something within us. It's a value of our church. We want to be the people who serve. Here's another question for you. Who have I written off as not my problem? As a church, do we cross boundaries to serve people, or do we only help people like us? Are we known for our love in action, or just saying a lot of nice words? These are important questions for us. Finally, the third observation of this story, number 3, your neighbor's pain is your opportunity. Our neighbor's pain is our opportunity. Verse 37, Jesus says, after he tells the story, he says, go and do likewise. He says that the Greek phrase for do likewise is It's a little tricky. I've never been a good grammar person. My wife loves grammar. I can't really stand it. But in the Bible, there's all kinds of grammar that helps you understand what the intention was. And so the grammar here is present, active, imperative. Present, active, imperative, which means keep doing this. You can't do it once. Don't just do it. Don't just plan on it one time. It's not a one-time act. It's a rhythm of life. It's something that you become because of who you are. It just becomes the place, the status, the experience, the culture that you're going to enter into. You're going to be the servant. You're going to be the one who's watching. You're going to be the one who notices. You're going to be the one that helps other people because you know that that's how Jesus was, and you also know that people need him desperately. So, Jesus doesn't define neighbor by geography. Jesus defines neighbor by opportunity. Not by geography, but by opportunity. By the people he places in front of us each day. Neighbor isn't who lives near me, although many of you should try harder to meet your neighbors. We just had our neighbors over to our house. We moved this year, and we kind of tried to get it on the calendar, and they work a lot, and we work a lot, and so we were talking and trying to get it on, and we finally did it, and we had them over, and it's just good. It's healthy, it's helpful, it's who Jesus was. And we need to try not to be so isolated and so have just this myopathy, right, that we just see through this little tunnel of our thing. And so, every moment of pain we encounter is an invitation from God. It's not an interruption, it's an opportunity. Come on, everybody say it. It's not an interruption, it's an opportunity. But we often miss it because of two fears, all right? Ready? This is why most of us don't do it, including me. Here it is, two fears. The first one is fear of inadequacy. What if I can't do enough? This feels like a cop-out to me. You know the God of the universe. You have so many opportunities. You have so much inside of you. But we somehow, what if I can't do enough? I won't be good at it. It won't. No, the second one is fear of exhaustion. Fear of exhaustion. And why do we have a fear of exhaustion? Because we're all so dang busy. I just said dang in a sermon. Sorry, babe. We're all so busy that we're afraid we can't fill it up with one more thing. This is a problem for God's people. If this is how we act, because we can't fit one more thing, so we don't want to know, so we keep our head down. That's not what Jesus called us to do. Your love, our love, God's love, isn't about fixing everything. You don't have to fix everything. It's about showing up faithfully and then letting God fix it. Jesus isn't asking you to be the hero. He's inviting you to be human again. He's just inviting you to be human again. And to be human is to bear God's image to a world that's desperate to see it. Every wounded person, every weary friend, every hard conversation, those are divine appointments, not accidents. God's doing stuff in the middle of it. The Samaritan didn't stumble into tragedy. He stepped into an opportunity to reveal God's heart. That's what we're called to do. So what made the Samaritan so good? What made the Samaritan good? He turned an interruption into an opportunity. You and I have to become good at that. You and I have to become better at that. You and I have to become okay with that. You and I have to become okay with the messiness of it. You and I have to be okay with the risks associated with it. You and I have to become the kind of people that will see every interruption as an opportunity because God is working. God is working. Not, he might do something here. No, he is working. And you and I just need to be able to spot it. So where might I be seeing interruptions that are really opportunities God is giving me? Who is God placing in my path right now that I've walked past before? How can I turn compassion from a feeling into an action this week? I want you to think about that. As a church, do we see our city's pain as a burden or as an opportunity for God's love to move through us? Are we known as a church who seizes opportunities to love or one that just schedules them? This week, don't wait for the perfect opportunity. Step into the one that's already in front of you. Notice the pain. Offer your presence. Interrupt your schedule for someone else's healing. You don't have to fix everything. It's not your responsibility to fix everything. Just bring the innocence of kindness back into one person's story. Band, I want you to come up. Who is my neighbor? That was the question the expert asked, right? Who is my neighbor? He was trying to avoid the person he didn't want to help and the person who he thought would never help him. That's why he asked it. He was trying to divide it. But I want you to hear today that the question is not who is my neighbor. The question Jesus wants us to ask is, what kind of neighbor am I? What kind of neighbor am I? Listen, we all want to be a good Samaritan. But if we're honest, the bad Samaritan still shows up sometimes. The one who walks into a room and says, who can help me, rather than who can I help? And it's not bad to need help. Like, some of us do really need help. What I've believed and what I've practiced in my life and what I think God asks us to do is sometimes when we're in need, that's when we need to meet somebody else's need in some other way. It's an act of faith. It's an act of trust in God. It's an act of planting a seed in someone's life because we have such great need. The best way to let the bad Samaritan fade is to let the good Samaritan flourish. The more we act in compassion, the quieter that selfish voice becomes. The more we give, the less room there is for greed. The more we love, the less power that fear has over us. Jesus is not calling us just to be doing good things, but to becoming good neighbors. We're not called to be performers. We're not performing compassion. We're rediscovering it, right? We're in a place where we don't want to learn a new program. We want to remember our most important posture as Jesus followers. To rehumanize the world. To see everybody as the way God sees them. We don't need more noise. We don't need more outrage. We need more innocence, more people willing to run toward the need. Help them stand up. Help them believe that kindness still changes things.